pitchers and catchers starting today, and your pitching staff is
Right.
coming off one of the best years ever.
Right.
How much do you feel that maybe the internal competition among these guys is going to make them better?
Well, I think that, the better pitchers you have collectively, I think brings out the best in all these guys. I really do. I think that, there's something to that, that internal, daily, I don't know if it's competition, but when you're around other good pitchers, I mean, you feel that. And I think that really brings out the best of you. And I think that, when Michael Jordan used to talk about practice and how they used to really compete in practice, like when they scrimmaged, I think that, that's sort of true to a certain extent, in our sport with our players, that, you're lining up against other guys, whether it's, throwing side sessions, whether you're just, doing pitchers fielding practice, spring training games, or when whether you're taking ground balls as an infielder or taking BP. If you sense that there's like talent around you, man, it gets you going. See what I'm saying? Okay.
How do you like the talent of that group?
I like the group. It's from from when I got here a couple of years ago. I sense that there was some talent, and I think we're building on that too. I think that the depth is starting to emerge a little bit from our system, and I think that there's some pitchers who have touched the big leagues that I think feel more confident in their ability to be big leaguers. But I think overall, we feel good about the group, about the guys we have here in camp, and I know that organizationally, it's something that we have to stay on top of. All teams do, right? Because you got to pitch. You have to pitch.
Buddy Brian Shaw last year, to his own admission, was very disappointing.
Sure.
In his performance. What did you see last year that had him go off the rails from your point of view? And what have you heard, or having talked to him or Holmesy, that is hopefully get him back on to be the pitcher you hope to?
Well, there's a number of things, but I think from probably the two things that probably made the biggest difference were the overall location of his pitches through an at bat, and I think from the mechanics side, I think he got a little bit out of whack. And here's a guy that has a very upbeat, aggressive, momentum building throwing action with a stride direction that's across his body, which is how he throws. And if you don't sync it up and you don't have the consistent release point, I mean your command and your ability to execute pitches is going to suffer. And I think that happened with Brian. And the more that he tinkered with his delivery, tinkered with his stride direction, I think everything just, he couldn't dig himself out of a hole. So with all pitchers, I mean, location is paramount. Ball strike ratio is paramount. He was pitching a lot of bad counts, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 3-1. And it's tough to have success that way. But silver lining for me, healthy. His arm felt good all year. His stuff sort of played out the same as far as radar gun readings and the life on it. He just didn't locate the ball like he had in previous years. So this winter, again, I think the focus is on some delivery consistency that he's worked on. Some release point where hand positioning needs to be repeated and consistent. And I think we'll see the difference. Once we get underway. Once we get into the season. Spring training. It's still a time to prepare for the season. But I think there's the early return so far, and just some side sessions and how he feels. It's optimistic.
You're encouraged that he was so proactive. I mean, he went to drive one, and he bought in, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think again, this guy. I mean, you don't have the success that he had without being aware of what's going on around you. And he was very aware that he had an off year. And to your point, there's a lot of pride in major league players when they have an off year. I mean, the determination to bounce back is something that they have in them. And, he started right away with going up the drive line with a couple of our coaches and identifying some things on slow motion cameras and, how the ball comes off his fingertips and, all these real technical things that we talk about. And it was very informative for all of us to see some things that we sort of knew, but were substantiated by high tech video. And, he can, go to work on some of these things physically. And that's what he's done.
With Adam gone, how valuable is that, or how much do you need
Well,
that as-
yeah, I mean, Adam for sure was a huge part of our bullpen and how he threw. Those are going to be innings that are going to have to be replaced performance-wise. But again, when you're talking about an 8-man pen and you're talking, 600 innings or 500 innings of bullpen work, hopefully, 500 innings, whatever that number is, it's got to come from everybody. So it's a collective unit that has to perform. But we feel as though with, the guys who were in our bullpen last year, McGee, Shaw, Oberg, some